Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Wang from Xi'an International University. It's my great honor to have you here for the US-China Cultural Exchange Conference. And also, I'm happy to have such an opportunity to share some of my opinions about cultural exchange. Before I start my presentation, I would like to share a little story about my own with you guys. Last year, I went to a lecture from a foreign professor. In that lecture, students seemed quite interested in the topic. They take notes, listen carefully, but when it comes to the any questions part, it's totally a silent time. No one hands up. Actually, as one of them, I do have some questions, but I'm afraid of making mistakes and being embarrassed. After that lecture, Professor said, in America, the concept of me first is quite popular, while in my opinion values affect the way of people's thinking and the behavior a lot. So my presentation is to discuss the possible causes based on the American Westward movement. Now we start the reason why I put more attention on the different values, individualism and collectivism between China and America. Here are the reasons. First, values are the decisive factor in understanding different culture. Second, a good understanding can help us to avoid misunderstandings and to read others' mind, interpret their actions and behaviors, know how to respond. Third, to know the values of another culture from historical background. The purpose of my paper is to, first, know how the individualism came into being in American history. Here means American Westward movement. Second, to explore how has individualism positively influenced people's thoughts in harder times. And third, to promote a cross-cultural exchange between America and China by analyzing the individualism in American Westward movement and the collectivism in Chinese Western development. While a good understanding of collectivism and individualism will promote a spiritual understanding and communication, and to know the cultural differences by history for a country, to promote business, cultural exchange, and to foster beneficial business US-China relationship. Ladies and gentlemen, we talk about individualism so many times, but few of people know what exactly individualism is. According to the Webster's New College Dictionary, individualism conduct and practice guarded by such a theory. Self-actualization and the maximal realization of individual potential are supreme aims in life, so they regard human being as the most important among all valuable things, and believe that individual is the primary unit of reality. Please look at this bar chart. From this we can say individualism is the predominant value in the Western countries like the US, UK, and Canada. Especially we can say United States is ranked the first. From the map of westward expansion in 19th century, we can see Americans have occupied a dominant position in Western Hemisphere, with vast territories stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific. It is an uncontestable time that American people tried to achieve their dream on the newly discovered land. That is to say, as each individual was inspired to contribute their painstaking effort to their survival, which was significant not just for them, but also for the independence and rise of the new country. In American society, opportunity, self-reliance, Independence and competition have the highest link with individualism. In 1602, the famous Mayflower-shaped moon Westland. It is a time that individualism was highlighted to its fullest possibility. In the campaign, millions of labor masses endured hardship in the pioneer work. They had created enormous material and spiritual wealth. Down to 19th century, and as manufacture in the shaping of American character, the earliest settlers came to the North American continent to establish the colonies, which were free from the controls that exist in Europe. As for self-reliance by making full use of the large uncultivated land, the government stimulated agriculture by accommodative policy. First, in 1784, the federal government made up three land acts, established three principles of dealing with western lands for the first time in American history. Second was in 1790, the total population of the United States was nearly 4 million people, and the farmers made up about 90% of the labor force. I believe an inheritance of rural life and farm labor was a prevalent concept in the new nation. Thanks for your attention again. I know it's a little bit longer for you guys to keep listening without rest. But now we come into the collectivism in China. In China, Confucius is considered as the greatest saint. He is the major founder of our profound traditional Chinese culture. Confucianism established and developed by one of his fathers. For the historical reason, collectivism is inherent in a Confucian society. In order for Chinese society to operate smoothly, it was necessary to subject one's own desire to the greater good of the group. In other words, people didn't exist independently of one another. Instead, an individual was defined by his or her relationship to the group. Now it comes to the manifestations of collectivism in Chinese Western development. In collectivism culture, individuals subordinate their personal goals to the collective. Cases are, first, Natural Forest Conservation Program and the Green to Green Program, which emphasize expansion of natural forest and increasing the productivity of forest plantation. Such ecology programs certainly have a great impact on the socio-economic livelihoods of farmers. However, considering the efficient development of this area, the group interests take priority over each individual. Farmers give up their rights of arable land to support the program, which fully embodies the spirit of sacrifice self-interest for the group. Second, volunteer teaching in the West. Now, heaps and heaps college students are joining in volunteer teaching in the West under the call of government. The students are the epitome of the traditional value of collectivism. They think a lot of the devoting spirit of individual for the collective benefits. Third, Qinghai Railway. The government has invested an unprecedented amount of money to boost the economy of the western area. Qinghai-Tibet Railway will ultimately promote the sustainable development of western China. As we discussed above, we know that America is the typical representative of individualism, and China is that of collectivism. Although there are many differences between America and China in various ways, people in the two countries have the same objective, no matter for the American Westward movement or for the Chinese Western development. The main objective is to boost and balance economy in different areas of their country. Holding their own values, the people in these two countries spare no effort to the national development and ultimately achieve their goals for their own good. Here are the conclusion part with all the reasons have been mentioned. It can be safely concluded that the value of one culture is the coherent, learned, shared will, and the value a group of peoples concerned about their lives. With a good understanding of culture, especially its value, the cultural communication will be more harmonious and beneficial. People's thinking can adjust accordingly to the situation. Here are the references which inspired me a lot when I write my paper. That's all. Thanks for your time, ladies and gentlemen.